Good morning, everyone. Hello to my co-hosts, Sheila and Tracy. Thank you, everyone who is tuning in to watch us live, or if you're watching the recording. I'm Kim Wilkinson, and I am joined with my beautiful co-hosts, Tracy Montgomery and Sheila Shorten. Today, we're going to be talking about love. Are you looking for love, and where do you find it? How do you find it? And where are you not going to find it? Before we dive into that, as always, we're going to just check in with everyone and see how the weekend was. So Tracy, let's start with you.
Oh, well, I had a very full weekend, in a good way though. So I just finished actually one of my consecutive day containers on Friday night. And on Friday during the day, I started a 3-day workshop called the Vision Workshop. Which was awesome. It's something I've done before in the past, a few times, mostly before the pandemic. I think I maybe did one during COVID, maybe online, but to do it in a group of people is different, right? So it was 3 days of, a lot of it is like universal laws, law of attraction based, shifting your mindset, talking about how to align your vision and your dreams with frequency and with your vibration. And so it's a very inspirational weekend, and it gives the opportunity to kind of really sit down and take some time and some space to look at what would I love and what would I want. So that was super beautiful. And at the same time, I noticed that, anytime I do these kind of containers at the end, I'm holding space for a lot of people for a very, for an intense amount of time kind of, and it's so I was a little bit tired. I was noticing that too. So I feel like I'm still kind of on that right now, where my body is catching up a little bit. And what I also noticed too, interesting, like, just being in a room with that many people, like it's been a while since I've been in a room with that many people. And so it was requiring me to pull out some tools that I haven't pulled out in a while, right? To just kind of like manage that energetic piece. And thank God for my Healy too, which I also used. But other than that, it was a very inspirational weekend. And I'm also looking forward to some downtime. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Awesome. That sounds like a great weekend.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sheila, how about you?
I was in Winnipeg. I was at a conference. So I was in a convention hall working a trade show booth. So you guys know what that's like. So I was there all day Friday working the booth, and then Saturday, and then hopping on a plane. There's not too many direct flights. So I finally made it home by just after midnight on Saturday night. So I was very grateful to get home. And what I really recognized was the contrast. So Saturday was fairly challenging. You got to catch a couple planes. I lost my glasses and all kinds of things. So I was searching for my glasses through the airport, and just different challenges that came up. I couldn't find my car when I got home. It's like 12 at night, and I'm like, where's my car? Where did I park? So all those kinds of things. And then when I was home on Sunday, it was the contrast. It was so beautiful to be home, and so refreshing to be in your own bed and to experience that. So I really saw the importance of the contrast, because yesterday was super special because Saturday was challenging for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, travel it's like the pros and cons, right? There's the joy in it, and then the discomfort it can bring. So yeah, but I'm sure you're getting really good at navigating that. My weekend was good. It's interesting because I've been doing so many quantum hypnosis healing sessions with people, and I've been having these weird experiences while I sleep. And I'll share a quick little story about Saturday night. So over the weekend, Saturday, I was sort of feeling like I was fighting something. I wasn't sick, but I had a little bit of a headache and that little bit of a sore throat. And we have this tree in our backyard. I love this tree. I meditate under it in the summer, and I talk to it. It's huge, and I have all sorts of wind chimes and bird houses and shell things in it. Anyway, Saturday night, we go to bed, and we are sleeping with the window open because the weather is nicer now. And the blind happened to be up. I usually like it closed, but I was too lazy to get out of bed and close the blind. But I fell asleep, and I was somewhat awake in the middle of the night, when you're kind of half awake and half asleep. And I remember kind of feeling this bit of a headache. And I said to myself, I really need some healing. And all of a sudden I could hear the wind chimes. coming from the tree just outside. So it is right in front of our bedroom window. It's quite a tall tree. But what was interesting was there's four for sure, maybe 5 sets of wind chimes out there, and they all sound very different. And I was only hearing one in particular, and I thought, oh, that's kind of weird and cool. And I kind of drifted back to sleep. And then I remember kind of half waking up again. I was having a dream, and I can't remember what it was, but again, I could hear this wind chime, and it was almost like it was playing perfectly. And I looked out the window because the blind was open, and by this time it was closer to 5, so there was a little bit of light, and the tree was not moving at all. Like the smallest branch was not even moving. I thought, okay, how is this wind chime moving, and why is it just that one and the others? And I laid there and I just was enjoying it, and then it continued, and I thought, okay, I gotta go check this out. So I went downstairs to my kitchen where there's another window which is just below our bedroom, and so I can see there. And I decided to go have some toast. And I'm looking at this tree, and I can see this one wind chime, and it's moving, and I can hear it. And so I go closer to the window, and nothing else on this tree is moving. The other wind chimes aren't moving. There's no little branches moving. Like there's no wind at all. It was the coolest thing. And I thought, I got to video this because no one's going to believe me. So I go back up to get my phone, which is always plugged in by my bedside. And I grab my phone and I come downstairs, and the battery's dead. I don't know how that happened because it was plugged in and it was completely dead. So I couldn't even take a picture or a video. And so I decided, okay, I'm just meant to enjoy this. And I went back to bed and I just laid there, and it was just so cool to hear just this one chime playing so beautifully. And again, the tree not moving, none of the other chimes moving. And then the next day when I woke up, it had picked up the wind throughout the day. And I went outside onto my deck and I watched, and it did not sound at all like it did before. It was just really cool. Do I have an explanation? No. But it was just felt very interesting in that it seemed to be happening with what was going on in my mind or what I was connecting with consciously. And I just love when that stuff happens. So I thought it was really cool. So I wanted to share that.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So
on a slightly different note, I'm curious actually, because when you said this, it reminded me, because you said your phone was charged even though it had been plugged in. I don't know about you, but like technology over the past couple of days for me has just been like haywire in a lot of different ways, like things not working the way they normally do, or, things just like freezing. Actually, Friday morning, my truck broke down. I was stuck in the middle of a main road Friday morning in rush hour trying to get to this course. And it was a computer related issue, but my truck just stopped working.
Yeah. Energetically, there's so much happening.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating, but it can be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I also actually last couple of days felt like I'm not sick, but the symptomology that is presented itself, same thing. I had a bit of a sore throat, and I had like some, kind of nasal sinus stuff. And I'm like, but I'm not sick. It's interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm feeling better. But yeah, that night I was just like, whew, I needed some healing. Felt better after. Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Right,
I'm surprised by the fact that your phone wouldn't work. That really seems interesting in the story because, we work in this realm and we see miraculous things all the time. And every time we see them, we're like in awe of it. We haven't got used to the fact that these things happen. And obviously you weren't used to the fact that something like this could actually happen. But it's kind of interesting that they took away the phone. I mean, whoever you want to call it, why your phone didn't work. I find that fascinating in the sense that it's almost like a tap on the, on the wrist and saying, or whatever, saying, this is really happening for you. This is actually happening. And why are you doubting it? Why are you having to document it? Because the documentation is not the experience. The experience is the experience itself.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something. I'm trying to find it. I got these new cards when I was in Thailand. It's called Moon Witch. And I keep pulling this one card that is talking exactly about what you said. And it's something about, I'm trying to find it, but it's bloom even when nobody is watching. And that resonates with me so much because I know, Sheila, you know for sure, I'm one of those ones, like when something happens, like I had a really good card reading the other day. I took a picture and I sent it to Sheila. I'm like, look at this, right? But the message that keeps coming up is you can just be in it, enjoy it. And it, like, maybe we're looking for validation or something, but yeah, why do we have this need to always show everybody? Whereas the message in this card is all about, just bloom, even if no one's watching, if no one's listening, just enjoy it and be in it. And I love that message. And so you just reminded me of that. Yeah.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into our topic. I'm pretty excited about this. So we're talking about love. And I mean, gosh, we could talk about this for weeks, right? I mean, what really is love? But love is something that we all want. I think most people will agree love is one of our basic human needs. Love can be about connection. It can be about a lot of different things. And I know I'll say even maybe my definition or my perception of love and what it is has changed, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. And, like with a lot of topics, there isn't necessarily one right definition or understanding of love. But I think that, that expression, looking for love in all the wrong places, could be very true for a lot of us in this world. So Tracy, I'm going to start with you and share with us just your thoughts on, love. Where do we find it? Why are we looking for it? What comes up for you?
Those are like the existential questions. Can you give me an easier question? Like, what day is it? I don't even know I'm just kidding. Oh, love, it's to me, it's one of those interesting things that it when you feel it, but to articulate it is something that it's almost like, I feel like, I mean, yeah, I could Google it, right? And I could pull up all of these different definitions, but I feel like from a logical perspective, you might go, oh, okay, well, I get that now, but yet I feel like you don't really know it until you experience it, right? And I think for me, like one of the biggest ahas that I would have had or awarenesses around it, and not to say that I've never had love before this, but just if I had to pick like a poignant experience of what love really is, it would be when I had my kids. Right. It would be when they were born. It would be like, even if I really need, like, if I feel closed off and I need to tap into my heart center and I need to get into that space of emotion, the first place I will go is to my kids, because there is and I don't even like to use the word unconditional. Like lately, that's actually been rubbing me a little bit. Like, I feel like it's almost like it's an unnecessary word maybe to use, but there is such a bond and a connection there that is indescribable for me in a lot of ways compared to other relationships, right? Like if I chose my husband, right? I chose that. And not that I didn't choose my kids, but I didn't birth him. Do you know what I mean? So there's definitely for me different types of love depending on the relationship, and not that one is better or worse or stronger than or less than. It's just that they're multifaceted or maybe multidimensional is the word, right? And at the core of it all, right, the source of love is within, right? So if my love for my children is coming from within, then it's also only I guess fair, or for me, right, that the love that I, have for myself also comes from that space too, right? And I feel like sometimes that's where we get a little stuck, and because we have these emotional needs of wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard and wanting to belong and wanting to feel safe, and that there can sometimes be this idea or this belief that's been put in that we need to seek that outside of ourselves. And when we start to connect with it more on the external level, then I feel like we just feel this void or this lack in our lives because it's harder for us to then connect to it on an internal level. But it needs to start internally first.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sheila.
Love has been a journey for me. Love has kind of been a lot of different things for me, but ultimately in the end, it's sort of where it is now, and it could change. I could still be on the journey of love, but where it is for me, is the experience of all. It's the experience of everything. And I was looking for it in a partner. And the ironic thing is that I never really had a stable partner. And so me going and grasping and looking and trying to find it in something else was futile. And my guides and my angels would knock me on the head and say, okay, come on, move this way. But I was determined to find it in someone else. I was looking for a partnership that would fulfill me. And of course, we know that the impossibility of that. We know, as mature women, we understand that. If you're looking at this video and you're younger and you're like I was, you're like, no, love is romantic. It's when he brings me roses, and when he takes me for dinner, and when he does this for me and he does that. That could be what you think the experience of love is. But the experience of love is looking out your window at the wind chime. It's looking at the tree in your backyard. It's remembering the birth of your children. All of that is love. The whole experience of life is love. It's me on a plane with someone incredibly negative beside me, telling me how poorly their trip went, how terrible their day was. And I'm like, can I find love for this experience? Or am I going to just dive into where he's at and say, you know what? I had a worse day. My day was worse. So I think love can be found in every experience that we're in. But the challenge for us is that we romanticize it. And we've done this from the dawn of time. My partner and I were listening to some 90s music and 80s music, and we're like, oh my gosh, how dramatic those songs are. Even the songs that we listen to romanticized love. And if the partner didn't love you, you were heartbroken and devastated. And that's what we actually did back then. And it's fun to listen to it now, because that's not the experience where I'm at. The experience where I'm at is I'm in a place where I definitely do see love in a lot of things. I see challenges still. Of course, I still have challenges and things, but my gazing point is no longer looking for something to love me. My gazing point is me gazing outward and loving. So that's the way I would suggest it happened for me. But that was a process. That was me internet dating for 6 years and picking the wrong person, not a bad person, just picking the wrong person. And it was just them showing up as a mirror to me, to show me that you are looking for love for this person to be that for you, all that for you. And so they were just doing their job. They were just sitting there doing their job and showing me that doesn't work. That's absolutely painful, and it's destructive as well. I read a quote the other day, or it was about how we finally get to a point where we no longer want to be the mirror. We get to a place where we no longer want to be the mirror, and that's our consciousness. That's our understanding of self. And I think, and I can't speak 100%, but I think I've come to that point where I no longer want to be the mirror. I don't want you to show up to show me where I'm missing out or what I'm really misunderstanding. And there comes a point when you need to trust the soul. What is your soul calling for? What is your soul really responding to? And we've been conditioned to look for the mirror. We've been conditioned to look for others to show us where we're falling down or what's going wrong in our life. And I've done that to the nth degree. And I'm at a point, I really do believe, and I'm not saying I'm there, but I'm just saying I'm at a point when I no longer want to be the mirror. I want to be consciousness. I want to be awakened. I want to be who I'm meant to be on this planet.
I love that. And it's so true. We are so conditioned, right? That is our biggest, I think, challenge as humans in this society. And we're conditioned in every aspect, in love, in health, relationships, career, all of it, right? And yes, as you talked about the music, I was thinking of that last year too, listening to music on the treadmill, and no matter what genre, right? Country, rock, pop, it's all about this is love and this is heartbreak. And yeah, we're taught, we're conditioned in such a wrong way. And it's no wonder there's so much suffering and so much unhappiness. And I think, and I was definitely that person that was caught up in, thinking I need to be in a relationship and be with someone to be happy. And if you can find that, that's great. But I think you need to find love and happiness within yourself first. Like Tracy said, we got to look within first. I'm reminded of a couple of things that I heard. One was from Sadhguru years ago, where he talked about, love isn't an action or a verb. Love is an emotion. But we have turned it into such a verb, right? I love you. Whereas he says, I have love for you instead of I love you. Or if we're expecting someone to love us, right? They have love for us. They're not giving love. Love is not a verb, but we've made it such a verb. Another one is, I forget his name, but I think he was a rabbi, and his little video clip is on fish love, calls it fish love. And he says, he talks about this person who loves fish and loves to cook fish and enjoys eating the fish. And he says, you don't love fish. You kill the fish, you cook the fish, you eat the fish. That's not love, right? So much of what we love is fish love, he calls it. And I thought, oh my God, that makes so much sense, right? Like we throw the word love around too, like crazy. We throw it around like crazy. And I mean, it is something that should be a part of everything, but with the right intention, if that makes sense. So I do feel like so many of us have just got this wrong understanding of what love even is. And then, we're looking for it in other people. We're looking for it in places, in our home, in our work. And I think a lot of times we get a false sense of finding it, right? Because we will experience the sensation or the feeling of love at times from a person in a relationship, or from being in our work or the work we do, or being somewhere like on a trip. We can feel in love, or getting a new puppy, right? But we know that doesn't last forever. But we get attached, right? And I think that's the other big part, is we get attached to these outcomes and we create our own suffering. And that's when we have the heartache and the heartbreak and the sadness and the suffering, and we lose the sense of love. And coming back to what Tracy said, it all starts within us, and the need to love ourselves first. And I think we talked about this maybe last week or the week before. We talked about responsibility and taking responsibility for our own experiences in life. And I think that's true also for the experience of love. We have to be the ones to create that first. And I'm a big believer now. I wasn't before, but knowing what I know now and what I've gone through just in my own relationships, I really believe you cannot love someone else or expect anybody else to really have love for you unless you love yourself first. You'll only just get that false sense of love for a period of time, and then you're going to feel lost from it. But when you truly love yourself, and I think part of love comes acceptance and non-judgment and, all those other things. That's where I guess the unconditional piece comes in, right? So if I have unconditional love for my husband, it's because I'm going to love him no matter whether he makes me irritated or he disagrees with me on something. That's unconditional love in my mind, right? Where there's no conditions, no judgments, no exceptions. Just that acceptance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's making me think of a few things, like, to what Sheila was mentioning about the idea of the mirror. Like I've said often, well, in the later part of my life is, kind of the phrase of, you can never love someone else more than you can love yourself. Right. So it's that mirror idea of, okay, if I'm judging someone else, then where am I judging myself? Right. And kind of looking at it from that perspective. But what's also coming through that's interesting too, is like, if I were, in a lot of ways I would say that, the spiritual journey is the journey of love. To me, in so many ways. If I look back to where I started, when I started dating as a teenager and all of those things, when I was even in my young 20s and even late 20s, to be honest with you, I struggled with who I was in so many ways, whether it was what I looked like, how much I weighed, how I belonged, all of those things that, I allowed the external world to be what would dictate who I was. Right. And the love that I had for myself back then was, there was none. There was none. It was like I was waiting for someone else to give me permission or to somehow validate or show me that I was lovable in some way, shape, or form, right? That I was accepted. And in that, like, I can look back now and see like all the different spaces and places where I gave my power away, right? Whether it was in a friendship with someone else, and I was trying to fit in, or whether it was romantically with a boyfriend or, someone that I was serious about. And I had so many relationships where it was like, I gave all of myself away. It was like, if someone were to say, who is Tracy? You couldn't even, that analogy where people are like, have you ever noticed that when you get a dog, the dog and the owner start to look alike? It was almost kind of like that in a way. It was like I just blended into whoever I was in relationship with. And it could have been a friend too. It didn't have to necessarily be romantic, right? But it was like I morphed and changed and molded myself to be what I thought would be the exact version of what that person needed. Right. And I, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I feel like that might be something that a lot of young girls go through. Right, is they feel disempowered and there's such a deep desire or longing to fulfill this need of validation and love that's what we would do. We become the chameleon in so many ways, right? And then when I started through my journey, that was when I started, just like the chameleon, peel back a color, peel back another color, change colors. I started to peel them all back to find, what was the true color of my chameleon and what was underneath. But it's really fascinating how, the more that I have, stepped forward on my spiritual journey, the more that I have come to love myself in all ways, right? Not just the parts that I want people to see, but the shadow and the dark aspects, and to be able to really share those. What I do for a living now, or how I share now, I could have never done 2 decades ago.
It's interesting because I can relate to that 100%. I went through that. And then I also think we can also go right to the other far end of the scale and almost do the opposite. And I know I've done this too, where especially when you are in a relationship, and it could be an intimate relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be with family, especially I think when we start to love ourselves more, we start to wake up, right? And we find these things that bring us more joy or healing or whatever it is. And then we want others to experience that too. And then we really show up as the mirror, right? And I mean, there can be pros and cons to that. But again, we get so attached to the outcome of it. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a hard time accepting when those other people aren't coming along with us or going in the direction that we want them to go because we love them and we want them to experience this, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to control it. That's not love. That is also not love. And I know what I learned, and it took me a long time to learn this, but when I finally did learn that and pulled back to find that balance in the middle of, not being too far this way, not too far that way, what happened is I put myself first. And not only did I change physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, my relationships with all the other people started to change without them even doing anything, without us even having conversations. Mm-hmm. Because it was just the energy, I think, of love. Yeah. And not control and not fear and not attachment.
Well, and isn't it interesting how we've been conditioned that the more that we do or give to someone is how we show love, right? The more that I give of myself, the more that I sacrifice of myself, the more that, I prevent someone else from suffering, even if it means that I have to suffer instead, that seems to be a more common yet unspoken version of what love is.
Sheila, what else have you got to add?
Love is love. When someone says, oh gosh, this person treated me poorly, but they love me. I'm like, that's a little bit, like the opposite. They're treating you like this. This is not love. Love is, we all know what love is. We all have well, we don't all know what love is. We've just discussed that. We think we know what love is, but we have the experience of knowing what kindness and compassion is. And those actions that are opposite of that are not love. Clear and simple. If you're abusive towards your partner in ways that you might not be hitting them or physically harming them, but you could be actually putting limitations on them by saying, you must do this, you must be like that. That's not love. It's absolutely the opposite. And, you know, we come into this world thinking that, you know, our partnership with someone is all in. And yet someone's treating us without the respect and love that we desire and want. And yet we're willing to sit in that because, oh, yes, they love me. But perhaps it's time to maybe look at what you're in, what experience you're in. And are you in a loving experience? Are you in a space where things are working in the space of love? Because love is not harmful. The other thing that happens in our society, and it was huge for me when I was younger, was don't call him. Don't call him. Play hard to get. We've got to play these games of hard to get, because if we show them that we're available, then that means we're needy. You're just needy. Isn't that crazy that showing someone that you care and being open and available to someone is needy? We've mixed this whole game up. If you find someone that's available and cares about you and wants to be with you, and you're like, oh, he's too needy or she's too needy, take a look at where you're at. Take a look at why that would be the response you would. I mean, it could be in good reason, or it could just be the fact that you've got love mixed up. You think that love has to be the chase. You think love has to be someone coming after me and wanting me and desiring me, because you're looking for them to show you that you're desirable. And here someone shows up and says, you are desirable, I want to be with you. And you're like, oh, too needy, too needy. So it's funny how we've set up these parameters in our world. Hopefully the young people are starting to understand that these things, these are limiting, and they don't set us up for success. They set us up for a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties, but hopefully we're coming to a place where we're starting to understand that love is love. And love for self. When we're trying to, like you guys said, like you spoke to, is that we're trying to be something for them so that they can love us. That's not love. That's not love of self. You're trying to change yourself to be different so that someone will love you. It's convoluted, and all of us can see the difficulty and what the resistance in that. There's a lot of resistance in that. So love is love. And I think when we start to remember that and start to focus on that, and if we are attracting in people that are showing us different things, look at those things. Pay attention. What are they showing you? What is that person showing up to show you? And then go there. Be willing to go there and say, okay, that person is showing me that I don't have self-love. Why don't I have self-love? I'm going to go here and I'm going to discover why. I'm going to figure that out, because there are ways of figuring it out. I think that we're all working through that process. We all lead individuals through that process. So there are ways of figuring out our worth. But unless we want to do the work, unless we want to go look at it, we're going to be settling on looking outside ourselves for love. And it's pretty common in our world, very common.
I'm reminded right now of the 5 love languages, or love languages in general, right? And coming back to how we're so conditioned to think love is all about romance and flowers and, you know, picnics on the beach. And that happens for some people. And that is some people's love language, right? But it's not everybody's. And I know I was of that expectation for a long time. That was my belief that that's what love is. And that's what, you know, every intimate relationship needs to be romantic like that. And then when it doesn't happen, you're like, what is wrong with me, right? What do I need to do to make this happen? And that's when we lose that self-love. For me, when I discovered the love languages, that was a whole new awareness for me, right? Because my husband and I have very different love languages. He is an acts of service 100%. You know, I'm a mix of a few, but you know, for him, now he does buy me flowers. I don't know why he started doing that, but he never used to. Maybe he knows my love language now, but he never used to. And I don't know if I would get frustrated, but I think early in our relationship, I would think, okay, well, what's wrong with me? What do I need to do so that he'll want to be more romantic? And then when I realized that love language is his act, or acts of service is his love language, I moved into a whole new place of acceptance, right? And then I just go buy myself flowers now. If I want flowers, I could buy myself flowers. There's another song that just came out. It was big around Valentine's Day. But that's what I do, right? If I want flowers, I'm going to buy myself flowers. Whereas his acts of service is making sure I have, windshield washer fluid in my car and stuff, that I've got everything I need for home, that stuff gets done. So now I appreciated that stuff before, but I have a whole new appreciation for it now. And I also know, because that's his love language, that it's more, I can show him love more by taking his vehicle and putting gas in it, as opposed to buying him a gift. And that's just the truth of our relationship. And I think when everybody can understand the actual truth of their own different relationships and not what the world says it's supposed to be, that's when you're going to find love. We're not going to find it in the stereotypes, in the conditioned mind. We need to forget all of that. And like you said, turn inwards, connect to the higher consciousness, and find understanding.
Yeah. What that brings up for me, Kim, is this really interesting question just around like, what would our experiences be like, or what would our relationships or our life be like if we actually didn't have any expectations about what love was or what it needs to look like, right? Like, and the first thing that pops in my mind is like movies. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I fucking love a good, like, romantic, it could be a romantic comedy. It could just be a romantic love story, like The Notebook. Oh my God. Right. Like, or, I've got a few movies that it's like, if I know I need to release some emotion, I need to connect to my heart, or I need like a good cry, that's what I'm going to put on. Right. And then there's been other movies too, where, cause everything has been like, like, for example, 50 Shades of Grey, like, some people are like, oh my God. But when I watched that, when I read those books, like the level of like passion and yearning and like deep down into like your fucking bones, like, I was like, oh my God, right. The intensity of that. And you watch these things, and on one hand, to be able to have, these movies or these books or anything like that to connect to, is really, in essence, an amazing gift, because it's it inspires the human spirit. It shows us what's possible. It shows us what it could mean to be human. It gives us hope. Like, there's all these positive things, right? But then there's also, of course, the duality of that, which is then we watch the movie of 50 Shades of Grey and we're like, well, I want that. That's what I want. And that might be what we want, right? But sometimes we're also creating things that, then it's like, well, maybe my relationship started like that, but then, 5 years in, it's no longer like that, because, we have things called lives. And then we're like, oh, well then, I must not be happy because it still doesn't look like this. Right. And one of the interesting things that I've talked about a few times that I find so fascinating is, I remember when I got married, and like when you're in the beginning stages of your relationship, and dating, it's like everybody calls it the honeymoon phase, right? And it was so beautiful in so many ways, because it was just him and I, right? It was just him and I, but nobody really wants to talk about what happens as you start to spend, even more time with each other. Like, as you start to move through the years, right? Nobody talks about that. And I don't know about you, but I didn't ever think about, when I was standing at the altar, that, things would be different in a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 15 years or whatever it is, right? It's almost like there was this unspoken just expectations, like, this is our relationship now, and this is what it's going to be for the rest of my life, right? And then you start to move through things, and you shift and you change and you morph, and life happens. And some of them are miraculous and wonderful, and other times are hard and not so miraculous and wonderful, right? And it's almost like money. It's like a taboo thing we don't want to talk about, in a way, right? And so then we go through our relationships, and things might get hard, and we're like, well, it's not supposed to be like this. Or why is it like this? Right? Or, oh, okay, things are hard, we must not be meant to be together, right? Like, it's almost like in some ways the resiliency has been taken out of it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. I think we do get so attached to expectations, right? And I think it's okay to have expectations, but without the attachment, because remembering that things change. We grow and our expectations then can change, or the other person's expectations can change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you make me think when you're talking about the movies, and I agree with you. It was funny. What popped into my mind is that movie Deadpool. If you've seen that, which is such a violent movie, but it's like at the beginning, he says, "This is a love story." And it actually really is. But it just popped into my mind as you shared that. And it just shows again that there are so many different perceptions and expectations when it comes to love, right?
Well, and if you believe that everything in the world is about love, then everything is a love story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting, we don't romanticize familiarity. The one thing, I was in a long-term relationship, and the thing that I missed the most when I got out of that long-term relationship was someone knew me for a long time. And there was a familiarity, but that familiarity is the thing that we say breeds contempt. It breeds the opposite, but it was the thing that I probably missed the most. It was something that I really appreciated in my partnership, that they knew me from, this age until this age. And there were certain aspects of myself that others wouldn't ever know that about me. But my partnership, that familiarity is a very romantic part of the relationship. It's, if you want to call it that, it is something that really evolves and helps us to become, very much, you feel supported, you feel like you have someone that's got you. All of that stuff is never really paid attention to in love. It's got to be that 50 shades of gray where you can't wait to tear each other's clothes off. And that's part of it, because that happens in the beginning typically. But where's the rest of it? And I think you're right, Tracy. We don't really speak to what happens next. We speak to what happens now. And then there's the things that evolve. And I think it's an evolution. That wanting to tear each other's clothes off is just the fact that we're going to, be attracted to each other. And that's there. So we know that. But then there's also the aspect that, we're going to get to know each other. We're going to know things about each other that nobody else knows.
Well, and I think what's happening in those moments is, a void is being filled when we're in that passion and romance, right? And as the relationship goes on, then we remember, oh yeah, I don't really love myself like I could or should. I don't appreciate myself like I could or should, right? And, most of the time we're not really aware that's what's happening, but that's what's happening. That person cannot, they can fill the void, but it's not their job or their responsibility. And it's not going to happen forever. But I think you can find that self-love for yourself. And then you can also re-find that initial passion and romance or whatever it is that filled you up in the beginning. Right. But until we find that for ourselves within ourselves, we're never going to find it permanently.
And it's interesting too, I think for people that are, I don't know, like for me, I feel like there's a bit of a different dynamic that comes in once you have kids. Right. How do I even put that into words? And not from I'm not saying that I don't mean to compare at all, but it's just the more that's going on in your life, the more there is to navigate. Right. And
parenting is hard.
Yeah.
And parenting with someone else is even more hard because you were both brought up different ways. So you have different ideas of parenting, right? That alone is a struggle. And then time. Yeah.
I never had children, so I do observe how hard parenting is. I've never experienced the hardness of it. But one of the things that I notice in parenting, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's such a desire for your child to be a certain way. There's such a desire for your child to act in a certain way. And the hardness is the child's independent. The child has their own way of being. The child is an independent person. They are an extension of you, but that extension of you is if they misbehave in the supermarket, you feel like it's you. You feel the difficulty, like you failed. And from the outside looking in, because I wasn't ever that person, I never had that experience. I'm like, that parent didn't fail. Their kid's just being a jerk in that moment, or their kid's just having a moment, right? But I see a lot of parents taking responsibility for their children's behaviors when it's not their responsibility. They got to keep them safe, and they got to, show them certain paths in certain ways. But, if that kid's acting out or doing certain things, that's the child's responsibility. That's what's happening within them, not within you.
That's interesting, Sheila, because yes. And what I would also say is, at what point is their responsibility, right? Because we also have to show them, right? We have to model, we have to scaffold how to navigate their own emotions, their own behaviors, all of those things, right? So there's like an interesting learning curve, right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh God, don't get me wrong. I know there's like things that you guys have to do, and I know there's certain responsibilities, but taking on the responsibility of their if they win the hockey game, or taking on the responsibility of if they have friends, taking on the responsibility if they get a job, like so invested in what's happening with that child that they've decided that it's them. It's who it reflects on them. If that child doesn't have a good hockey game, if that child doesn't advance in dance, if they don't get on the right team. I mean, we've all seen these experiences. We all see them out there. There's parents that this seems to be something that they've decided to take on the responsibility for the child's feelings. They're responsible to guide the child, absolutely, but are they responsible for the feelings? It's almost like we're the same thing that we're talking about. Is their responsibility just to love?
I feel like what maybe you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but about like the responsibility for, so that it is for the parent's own satisfaction, not the child's.
Correct.
Yeah. Because like going back to like kids acting out, like I know, I have a better understanding of this now because I was conditioned that, it's terrible twos or it's whatever. After going through my training with Gabor Mate, like if a child's acting out, it's because the need's not being met, right? So they're not feeling safe, they're not feeling heard, they're not feeling loved. So then that is the parent's responsibility, but they have to do it for the child's outcome, not for their outcome, right? Like, yeah, I can. And when you're saying that, Sheila, I'm thinking about the hockey moms, the cheer moms that are, trying to live through their kids. Yeah, that's not their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But the suffering comes in all of it when we're looking to someone else to, like, we're looking for a partner to love us. We're looking for the child to be a certain way. It's always comes down to looking outside ourselves for that external validation of love. So I think getting into parenting is not a realm I like to get into. I know it would trigger a lot of people because they're like, how do you know? You have no kids. You don't know what it's like. And I know it's freaking hard. Like I've seen how hard it is and I would never discount that. But I think just all I'm really trying to say is like the experience of looking outside ourselves to control something else, to try to make something be different than it is always the challenge that we face. And it's not loving.
Yeah. I think for me, if we were to answer a question, okay, how do we maintain love in relationships, whether it is for our kids or a partner or parents or friendships, what I've learned or what I try to practice, is that, I guess, the part of letting go. We can all get very frustrated sometimes by partners or friends or family. And I guess I've just been reminded a lot of times in life, as we all have, that tomorrow's never guaranteed. Mm-hmm. We don't know if we're going to wake up. We don't know if we're going to get hit by a bus. We don't know if something's going to happen to our loved one. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. And it's so easy, out of our own need of love not being met, to place blame on others and to, make them responsible for our needs not being met, whether it's, our kids not picking up after themselves, or our partner always forgetting to do something we ask, or something with our parents. And I guess what I've tried to practice is just letting go and not sweating the small stuff, so to speak. Because, and I know there's a lot of relationships I'm lucky. My husband does everything, but there's a lot of women I hear, my husband never does this. My husband, he always leaves his clothes on the floor or whatever. And I often think, okay, you know what? What if tomorrow was the last day those clothes were ever left on the floor and I never got to pick them up again? So I'm not saying that makes a perfect relationship, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is for us to share, what can we do to help move into the place of acceptance and be loving in the environment with the people we're in relationships with, whatever type of relationship it is. Because people are going to piss us off. They're going to irritate us, and we're going to do the same for others too. And we want to be loved even when we are not at our best. So I think it's only fair that we love others when maybe they're not at their best too. So that's something that I try to remind myself every day, is that people are allowed to have a bad day. People are allowed to not be feeling love. And if I can respond to it with love, it's going to be a better outcome for them, for me, and for our relationship. Sheila, any thoughts for you on how do we maintain love in a relationship?
I'm not the one to ask. I haven't done it for a long time. So yeah, how to do it? Well, learn from my mistakes. Learn from the mistakes that I've already made. The mistakes I've made was looking for the other person to be a certain way, conditional love. And I'm moving towards a space where hopefully I'm more unconditional, where I'm not looking for them to make me feel a certain way, make them be, they're not responsible for my happiness. They're not responsible for who I am. I'm responsible for that. So that's all I know at this point in time. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll learn something different, but I am definitely responsible for my own love of self.
Oh, and I love that you said like love of mistakes, right? Love of our mistakes. And it's okay to make mistakes. That's where we grow. That's where we get smarter and better. I love that. Tracy.
It's interesting. My husband and I had just actually finished a 1-year couples course. And if I look at that journey together, because it's the first time we've ever done anything like that in a group container, one of the biggest takeaways I think that I have is having a safe space to communicate your needs. So much can be understood about your partner when you're willing to, number one, take responsibility for yourself. And then number two, you're willing to communicate that and communicate what you need with your partner. I think that, and I see this in clients I work with too, is that we sometimes fall into this trap where we just expect, especially when we've been with someone for a while, and it could be friendship too, right? It doesn't have to be love. It could be family, it could be whatever, but there's this unspoken expectation that we should just know, right? It's like we should be mind readers. I should know what you're thinking. I should know what you're feeling. I should know what to do. I should know what to say. And I feel like that's one of the biggest detriments that we can have in relationship with someone else, is that there's this assumption, right? That this other person should just know. And if we can't be brave enough, right, to be vulnerable or to communicate what we want, because that's always shifting and changing, right? Like if you and I have a conversation today, Kim, I might just need you to hold space and listen to me. Tomorrow, though, I might actually really want some feedback, right? Whatever that looks like. But if we're never willing to communicate what it is that we need in our relationships, those needs can never be met. And at the same time, even though we're communicating it with our partner, what it is that we need, we also have to take on the responsibility that it's my responsibility to actually meet my own needs. Right. So it's not that I'm projecting it onto you, but it is saying that this is what I'm requiring from you right now in the space of relationship. I am requiring for you to hold space for me right now, or I'm requiring for you to to tell me that it's going to be okay, or to give me advice on what to do, or whatever that is. But I feel like a lot of where things go awry is that we're not communicating what we need, and we're making a lot of assumptions, like I like to call them. Right? Meaning that when I make an assumption, I essentially just make an ass out of myself. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so important, right? To communicate from love. I think part of our biggest problem in relationship is we communicate from here instead of here. I learned such a powerful lesson, and I teach this a lot now, and it's the whole hand on heart thing, right? And I think we even learned this in meditation teacher training, Tracy, if I remember a long time ago. But there was a time before my son died. It was pretty tense for our family, right? I mean, I'm married to a police officer. My son is struggling with drugs and bad group of people, and they're not related. He's my son from first marriage, and there was a time I thought we might actually get divorced, and we were sitting down having a conversation, and I was sitting with my hand on my heart having the conversation. And I mean, I felt the heat in my body. I felt my stomach turning, but I was talking pretty slow and calm. I wasn't crying. I was really clear on what I was saying. And partway through the conversation, my husband stopped me and he said, "You're not responding normally to this." And a little light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, yeah, you're right, because normal would be screaming and crying and freaking out. I was responding appropriately. I was responding from love. And, what I believe, my experience and what I believe and what I teach is when you have your conversations from love, maybe they're not always going to lead to the desired outcome, but they're going to lead to the best possible outcome. Because if I would have been speaking to that conversation from here and freaking out, it probably wouldn't have ended well. But it did. And we have a fantastic relationship now. So communicating from here is so powerful and so important, I think. Any last words, ladies, before we sign off for the day? We're good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, whether you joined us live or you're coming back for the recording. And we want to encourage you to hop over to the Facebook page, share your comments, your concerns, what love is to you, whether you disagree or agree, anything you want to share. And we've got some more exciting stuff coming down the line. So be sure to subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, invite your friends and family. We've got some great conversations. Thanks again, Tracy and Sheila, as always. Hope you both have a wonderful